The Sonic series is full of difficult tricks. If you've ever watched a run of any of the classic games, you've probably seen multiple tricks and glitches where runners are going into walls, gaining insane amounts of speed, and clipping into objects for weird effects, all in the interest of saving time. A lot of these are one-time tricks with a single setup once you know what's going on, but what if I told you there was a trick that combined all of the main glitches and tricks used in Sonic, as well as another glitch you can only do after setting it up with the other ones? I'm of course talking about Marble Garden 2 Skip, which is one of the most intensive series of glitches in the entire classic Sonic series. Not only is it specific to the Marble Garden 1 stage, but involves using the 3 main glitches in the Sonic series to set it up, which are the screen wrap, level zip, and level wrap. So sit back, grab a chili dog, and dive into the most insane skip in the Sonic series. To properly understand what's going on in this trick, you need to be familiar with the 3 main glitches in classic Sonic speedruns, as well as the glitch for getting the Marble Garden 2 boss to spawn in Marble Garden 1, or the boss glitch for short. The 3 main glitches we need to look at are the screen wrap, level zip, and level wrap, and the first we're going to look at is the screen wrap. Screen wraps are a trick that allow you to break the camera away from Sonic, which then gives the game some strange ideas on how collision works. This is accomplished by scrolling the camera all the way down, by holding down and then jumping, which makes the game think you are on top of the stage, so it wraps the camera vertically, trying to find Sonic. The reason this happens is because the top of the camera is position 0. Once you're above this position, it puts your position as -1. The game can't deal with negative numbers, so it thinks it's a very large positive number instead. The camera then begins searching for Sonic since your position is broken, and it believes that you're very far below the level. The reason this is called a screen wrap is because the camera will wrap entirely around the entire stage until it focuses back on Sonic, which is fortunate, otherwise the rest of the level would have to be done blind. Screen wraps are only possible in levels where there is no bottom screen lock or bottomless pits, which limits them to Sandopolis, Ice Cap, Marble Garden, and Sky Sanctuary. This can be done anywhere in these levels as long as the game hasn't locked the camera for some reason, such as in boss fights. The important thing here isn't the camera scrolling vertically, but the fact that the game only loads collision for objects when they are on screen with the camera. So when the camera isn't focused on Sonic, the objects still exist and are active in memory, they just have their collision turned off, which allows Sonic to pass through them. Let's look at an example of this glitch in action to better see what's going on and to explain the technical side of what's happening under the hood. This is Sandopolis Act 2, one of the only levels where a screen wrap can work. By the door, hold down to get the camera to scroll all the way down, and then jump. This puts your position above the camera, which makes the game believe Sonic is all the way down, so it starts moving the camera down. As a result, the objects near Sonic no longer have active collision, as the camera is not on them, so he can phase through them, including the door we were next to and even the nearby spikes. Level wraps, in the most basic sense, are a horizontal version of the screen wrap, except they send Sonic to the far right side of a level. Unlike screen wraps, they work when you're at the far left of a level. If you move to the far left too fast, you are given a negative X coordinate, and this is treated the same way as a very big positive X coordinate instead. These only work moving to the left because that's where the 0 coordinate for position is, and just like in screen wraps, once you hit a negative number, the game treats it as a large positive number. When the game assigns you a large X coordinate, it shoots you to the end of a level to try and reach this large number, but since the number is so large you go beyond any reasonable or useful section of a level, you instead hit something known as the right screen lock. The right screen lock is a position where the camera and Sonic cannot move to the right anymore. If you try to move beyond it, the game will just move you back to where the screen lock is. Of note here is that the end of a level does not correspond to the normal gameplay end of a level. When you use a level wrap, the game generates a bunch of junk to fill up the level when you arrive at the right screen lock. The items generated are usually of a level layout without objects. This is called a loop back, and I won't get into how or why this occurs. What's important is that using a level wrap, you can get to the far right of the map very quickly. Level zips are probably the most famous and recognized trick from a classic Sonic series, and they've been known about for a very long time. Level zips allow the player to clip into a wall, and then, due to the corrective physics of the game, you're able to exploit clipping into walls and zip through them very fast. So how do level zips work, and better yet, what's going on to allow them to happen? Normally, when Sonic runs into a wall, if he clips into it slightly, the wall will push him back out by giving him a lot of horizontal speed in the direction opposite of where you are going when you enter the wall, which is based on your input direction being pressed on the controller while you're in the wall. Knowing this, if you clip into a wall while pressing right, and then press left, the game will add horizontal speed, pushing you further right into the wall since it thinks you're entering it from the opposite side. This works in both directions. If you're entering a wall from the left and then press right, the game will zip you to the left. To see how this is possible, we need to understand how the game checks for collisions. If you look on screen, you'll see a bunch of boxes around Sonic's sprites, as well as some smaller squares of different colors. The white box is Sonic's collider, and that's what is used to stop him from going through objects and detecting collisions with objects. The slightly larger pink box is his hitbox, which detects damage. The smaller purple boxes are used for when Sonic is moving through the level and if he's colliding with the layout. If they collide with something, they tell his white collider that it cannot pass through what they are touching. The last piece of the puzzle for this glitch is spawning the boss from Marble Garden 2 in the Marble Garden 1 area, which will enable us to skip the entirety of Marble Garden Act 2. The game has a ton of background events running while you're playing that check for certain things that occur, such as if Sonic is past this position in a level, trigger a Knuckles cutscene, or if the camera is in this position, trigger a boss fight. Marble Garden 1 and 2 share the same pointers, which is odd considering every other act has their own pointers assigned to them. What this means is that in the code, the objects that the code has identified for spawning the boss in Marble Garden 2 are also active in Marble Garden 1. So if an Act 2 routine can trigger in Act 1, it can be called in the code to happen. Now that we understand that it's possible to spawn the boss, let's go through the steps to make it happen. Some of the setups required to do this will be explained later when we bring everything together, so if you think you're missing a piece of the puzzle, don't worry. Everything will come together at the end. The game is looking to satisfy two conditions from Marble Garden 2 in order to spawn the boss. In the normal boss fight, the camera needs to be past a certain X coordinate and has to be in a specific Y coordinate range. So when Sonic gets in the position where the camera satisfies these conditions, the boss spawns. In order to spawn the boss in Marble Garden 1, we need to satisfy these same conditions. One such location is here. In this position, the camera satisfies the X coordinate check, but it's still a bit too high on the Y axis. To fix this, we have Sonic scroll the camera down by ducking, and we get the boss to spawn. The boss himself triggers a more restrictive right screen lock, which is just inside the wall. The position where Sonic is just past this new right screen lock, so just like in a level wrap case, Sonic is snapped to the right screen lock position, which clips him inside the wall. In addition to the new right screen lock, the boss also triggers another more restrictive top screen lock. However, unlike the right screen lock, Sonic is not snapped to the new top screen lock, and the camera does not update itself to align with it either, unless it is forced to vertically update somehow through some action other than the player pushing up or down, such as the player jumping or taking damage. If that were to happen, we would be in trouble, as the boss appears relative to where the camera is, and uses the camera to know where to spawn and launch his attacks from. And the boss would take lower positions for his future attacks that would not allow the player to damage him, ruining the trick. So we do not want to do that. Instead, we want the camera where it is because the boss will conveniently do his attacks right in line with where Sonic is, allowing us to get hits on him by spin dashing. This is how you set up the boss to be defeated in the stage, but there are more steps to actually defeating him. Now that we know how the different tricks involved in setting up the boss work, let's see how to go about beating him. To damage the boss, we must first make it to where he is. Given that we are currently in a wall, you could move Sonic here by pressing a direction on the D-pad, which, if you recall how level zips work, would move in the opposite direction that you press. However, you move at a rate of 16 pixels a frame when zipping, which is very fast and difficult to get right if you're trying to stop at a specific place. Instead of using the zip to move, we can instead charge and release spin dashes. These move you 16 pixels per spin dash, which is about half a square when compared to the picture, making it easier to know where Sonic is. Additionally, Sonic is invulnerable while charging the spin dash. This is important because if the camera moves vertically here, it will cause the new vertical screen lock to kick in. And if Sonic didn't have iframes while spin dashing and he took damage, his hit animation would move his sprite up just high enough to engage the vertical screen lock. As we mentioned before, if the vertical screen lock is engaged during the boss fight, it spawns Robotnik's attack pattern below Sonic, where we are unable to hit him, making the boss fight impossible. Now that Sonic is in position, we have 3 phases we need to go through before we're finished with this trick. For the first phase, you want to charge and release 9 spin dashes. This will move Sonic in line with Robotnik for optimal damage. On the 9th or 10th spin dash, hold the button down and keep dashing. This will keep Sonic in place. You want to hold this spin dash for now, because he comes back up in the same position in line for you to hit him again on the 4th or 5th hit, depending on how fast you got to him. This hit when Robotnik comes back up is very important, because if he is hit on a certain frame while he is doing this transition, he will skip the next phase. Also, since we are already in line and in position to do damage, we hit him on this frame for free, so we might as well do the frame perfect trick for free, skipping an entire phase of the fight that happens during the regular course of normal gameplay. After this hit on Robotnik, you want to release the spin dash and make sure not to hold any buttons for the next little bit, because at this point, Tails is directly next to Sonic. By releasing the spin dash, Sonic will get pushed to the left, and if you're not holding anything, Tails will also release the spin dash on his own. The way that AI works for Tails is that if Sonic is to his left, Tails will move to the left to catch up with Sonic. But since you're both in a wall, when the game tries to move Tails to the left, it zips him to the right. This is because the AI of Tails follows the same movement rules as Sonic, so he can level zip as well. Pretty neat, huh? Robotnik is going to come from the left. Before he does, you want to charge your spin dash. Remember how I said Sonic was invulnerable when spin dashing? Robotnik cannot damage him, but the flames around Robotnik can, so Sonic will take damage here as Robotnik passes by. However, you might recall that if Sonic took damage or jumped, the camera would engage the vertical screen lock. We just took damage, but the camera didn't move. Why? If we look at the image with the level collider again, you will see that there's a blue level layout collider directly above him. This stops the animation of Sonic taking damage from moving far enough up to engage the vertical screen lock. If Sonic moved another frame up, the vertical screen lock would engage and ruin this fight. We take damage here, which takes us out of the spin dash, but we also get iframes, which lets us zip past Robotnik by holding left without any risk. We can then charge another spin dash, which gets the final 2 hits and defeats him. If you were too slow to get your 2 hits here, keep pushing down to hold your spin dash because Tails will be in position to finish Robotnik off for us. After defeating the boss, we still have to hit the capsule in order to save the animals and rescue GDQ. Sonic runners and Tassers actually knew about this boss fight for a few years, but they had no way to hit the capsule and trigger the end of game screen when playing with Sonic and Tails, as when playing with Sonic alone, you could hit the capsule and everything would happen as intended. For this trick to be completed, the post-boss sequence requires that Sonic be carried by Tails after hitting the capsule before the score tally screen will appear, which triggers the end of the level sequence and completes the trick. For reasons that will be made clear later, we first need to zip Sonic all the way to the left by holding right for 1 or 2 seconds. It is not strictly needed for what's immediately coming, but it is for later. Knowing the conditions to end the level, the first thing that needs to happen after killing Robotnik is for Tails to hit the capsule. If Sonic hits the capsule, the game will soft lock for the method we are using. If you look at this image, you will see that Tails is completely inside of a wall and unable to move out of it, and he will not be able to jump either because the game thinks there is nowhere for him to go as he is completely inside of the wall. As such, we need to have the capsule go to where Tails is. The capsule uses whatever the vertical camera position is in order to know where to fly to, but it will stop as soon as the full capsule is exposed to the camera or until someone hits it. To keep the entire capsule moving further down the screen, we scroll the camera down after it spawns, which keeps it moving without coming to a stop. Doing this also conveniently aligns the capsule vertically such that Tails can be made to hit it. When the capsule makes it to where Tails is, it will push him to the right. However, recall that this is where the right screen lock is, and since the game never wants any character to be beyond the right screen lock, it pushes Tails back in. Since in this position the capsule also moves right, this pushes Tails back in a position where he is directly under the capsule button, which makes him trigger it while also taking a crush death. After Tails hits the capsule, you need to stop pushing down. You'll see that after dying, he suddenly starts carrying Sonic, but why? Remember the normal boss fight? You'll see Sonic hit Robotnik a bunch and fall off camera, only to have Tails appear carrying him from the bottom of the screen back up. Tails will also pick up Sonic whenever he falls off camera during the boss fight. This fight is special because it's the only instance in the game where Tails will enter his flight animation on his own, which is a property we'll use to get the score tally to appear. There are 3 conditions that need to be met to get Tails into flight mode. The first is easy, since it is just that phase 2 of the boss needs to be started. The next 2 conditions to get Tails into flight mode in the normal boss fight are: Sonic needs to be off screen, and Tails needs to be below a certain screen position, a certain Y coordinate, which we will call special Y. During the normal boss fight, the camera remains in one spot, and the game simulates the ground collapsing by throwing objects through the air. Due to there being no more ground, Sonic will fall off screen, and Tails will fall below the special Y coordinate, which is just below the lower bound of the camera, thus making Tails pick up Sonic for the intended boss fight mechanic. Here is how we're going to make the game think we've achieved those 2 other conditions in the glitched boss fight in Marble Garden 1. We will satisfy the second condition of having Sonic off screen as follows. We scroll the camera down by holding down, which we were already doing because we were trying to get the capsule to hit Tails. Once the capsule hits Tails, we want to stop holding down. Recall that if the camera moves while in this position, it will be snapped down because we are on top of the top screen lock, except if the player is holding up or down. Since the camera was scrolled and we are no longer ducking, the game tries to move the camera back up. This counts as the camera moving on its own, which engages the correct top screen lock. If you recall, Sonic is unaffected by the top screen lock, so he's now above the camera and thus off screen. We now need to satisfy the third condition of having Tails below the special Y coordinate. If you recall, special Y is a coordinate just below the old camera position. However, by the previous step, the camera scrolled down to a position where special Y is now just below the middle of the screen. Tails just died, which puts him into his death animation, which caused characters to jump and then fall off screen. During his death animation, he'll eventually be low enough to be below special Y, thus satisfying the third condition. Sonic is off screen. We're beyond phase 2 of the boss fight, and Tails is below special Y. All 3 conditions are now completed, which tells the game to put him into flight mode and pick up Sonic, which satisfies the being carried condition, thus activating the score tally, which is important and will be explained shortly. The very first time Tails starts flying is always on the left side of the screen in this position due to how the intended boss fight goes. Now that the score tally appeared, you'll notice that a crusher appears on screen near Sonic and Tails. This is essentially the game trying to load Marble Garden Act 2 at the wrong place. During the normal Marble Garden 1 boss, the game takes note of your coordinates at the end of a level and subtracts your coordinates to a very specific number at the start of Act 2 in order to do a seamless transition. This subtracted number is a constant, and recall that we are not in the correct position to fight the Act 1 boss. We are much further to the right since we perform glitches to fight the Act 2 boss. This crusher and the rings you see are a specific part of Marble Garden 2, which the game has spawned you by subtracting that constant number from your current position in Marble Garden 1. The crusher is going to spawn in line with Sonic. This is actually a problem, because if you look at Sonic's position, he's right in line with the crusher, and if this happens, you are put back at the proper start of Marble Garden Act 2, and all of our work will have been for nothing. To avoid the crusher, you want to push right on the D-pad. Tails is carrying Sonic right now, and you can control him during his flight. As a result of the incorrect transition, Tails is also just inside a wall. As such, by pushing right, you'll get Tails to zip left. If your subpixels are too high, Tails will ignore the collision in the wall and just fly straight into the crutcher, which is bad. This is why we set the subpixels to 0 by zipping left before even starting to scroll the camera down. The score tally will now play out as normal, which is important because after its conclusion, the game will automatically transition to the next act. However, the Act 2 boss is special in that after its score tally, it will automatically engage the transition to the next zone in the game, Carnival Night. Moreover, the game does not check how far in the act we are before engaging the transition. As such, even though we just started Act 2 due to the score tally finishing, it will start playing out the transition to the next zone, thus skipping the entirety of Act 2. That was our whole goal, so congratulations, we did it! Now that we know how the different parts of this trick are set up and performed, let's put it all together and see what it looks like. Step 1. Hold down from the start of Act 1 until you land on the hill. Of importance is that unless otherwise mentioned, do not push left or right, at least until we get the level wrap, because we are doing subpixel manipulation. Align Sonic next to the ring box facing right without breaking it, then press left for 1 or 2 frames exactly. Initiate the screen wrap by holding down. Do a full jump after the camera finishes to scroll down. When you land, the camera begins to scroll slower. Charge and release a one-tap spin dash. After a short period, start doing pauses to pause the game on one of these 2 specific frames. Unpause, and exactly 1 or 2 frames later, do a full jump. If you pause in frame 1, you have 2 frames to jump, and if you pause in frame 2, you have 1 frame to jump. This will cause the camera to stop or jerk backwards a bit before stopping if done correctly. If the camera jerked then stopped, charge and release a one-tap spin dash. You will finally clip into the wall, and once the camera catches up to Sonic, push right to zip left, and keep pushing until you see the greenery level background again, which is 8 frames from the time you see the green to let go. You're now at the end of the stage because of the level wrap. Let the camera catch up, or do this blind if you're crazy. You need to climb the slope you will be placed on by charging a spin dash to the left, then do a full jump to get to the top. Hold right to zip left a long distance after getting over the ledge and end with Sonic facing right. If he's left, turn him around. This will take about 16 seconds to complete. Scroll the camera down to spawn the boss. Quickly charge and release 8 to 9 spin dashes to get to Robotnik, and then charge and hold another spin dash. If you jump or are hit by the boss here, you will soft lock. After 5 hits, he will come back. Let go of the spin dash, and after a few frames, push right for a bit to be zipped all the way left. Don't push right immediately after releasing the dash, or Tails will not go to the right as needed, but go to the left with you, which is not what we want. Once at the left edge, spin dash to get an extra hit, and the flames of Robotnik will eventually hit you here. This is fine, as it will force you out of the spin dash and grant you iframes. Briefly tap left to zip right, and using the iframes we just got from the hit, go through Robotnik, and charge and hold another spin dash for the final 2 hits. Release the spin dash, and right after the capsule spawns, hold right to be pushed all the way to the left, setting your subpixels to 0, then hold down to scroll the camera down. Tails will hit the capsule on his own and die. A few frames after this, let go of down and start holding right. The scene will eventually change and a crusher will appear. You can stop holding right as soon as Sonic gets a hold of Tails, and the tally will start to play. You're done! You will start at the end of Marble Garden Act 2, which is an automatic transition to Carnival Night 1. This video wouldn't have been possible without the collaborative work from Chrezm. He spent a lot of his time going over the trick, explaining all of the glitches in detail to me, and providing the graphics from the task tools to help explain this trick. Without him, there wouldn't be a video, so please go and give him a follow on Twitch, located at the links down below. Thanks as well to everyone that allowed me to use footage for this video. All of our links are down below, and you should check them out as well. I want to make this into a series, so if you have a glitch or game in mind, please post it down below as to why it deserves its own video, and leave the name of someone I can get into contact with to talk about the glitch with. Finally, I also run This Week in Speedrunning. It's a weekly news show on my Twitch channel that takes place every Sunday at noon Pacific. We have guests, interviews, recap records set throughout the week, and do a weekly discussion topic. Don't forget to join the Discord and follow me on Twitter for all the updates around the show and video series. Until next time, happy running!